So thanks everyone so much for attending our legislative preview event and for attending the full day kindergarten panel today. Very excited about our panelists and about having this conversation. Full day kindergarten is near and dear to my heart, and I know it is to our panelists here as well. My name is Elizabeth Garbe. I'm Senior Director of Government Relations and Public Policy for United Way of Salt Lake. Super sad I can't be with you in person. We will get there again one day, and you'll also have to excuse my lighting because I'm in the office and it turns on and off all on its own. A few notes. We are recording this panel as well as the other two panels, so you can watch them again later. There's a Q&A box, so please put your questions into the Q&A box and we will get to all of those. I'm not going to read everyone's panels. I'm actually going to, or their bios, I'm going to have them each introduce themselves. But I just wanted to kick us off by reading what the main part of why we're here today. And that's because we have a lot of work to do in expanding full day kindergarten in Utah. Nationally, 82% of kindergartners participate in full day kindergarten, but in Utah, only 1/3 of kindergartners participate. Utah's optional enhanced program is a grant funded program. And while that's great, it's really not working for all kids and doesn't provide equitable access to all children and families who not only need, but want that opportunity. So the full day is actually aimed at really providing not only the time, but for teachers to teach all of the things that students need to learn, but for time for children to actually practice and master those skills. So today we do have Senator Escamilla with us. We have Representative Waldrip. We have Amy Mitchell, who's with the Washington School District, and Kris Pexton. So for all of you, I would like for each of you to take a minute or two and introduce yourself and tell us why you believe it's important to expand full day kindergarten. And Amy, let's have you kick us off.
Awesome. Well, I would love to just say thank you. I feel so honored to be among this group and to hear Governor Cox speak in such strong support of this. It just warms my heart and makes me so happy to be asked to be here today. And thank you, United Way, for everything that you're doing to support this very important cause. So my name is Amy Mitchell. I am down in Washington County, where it's nice 55 degrees right now. And I have been working for the Washington County School District for 28 years. Most importantly, I started my career as a kindergarten teacher. Did that for about 9 or 10 years before I taught other grades, and then I became a teacher, leader, and coach, and a reading specialist. And eventually I was a principal of a Title I school with an at-risk population of about 70% students were on free or reduced lunch. And now I am currently at the district office, where I am a Title I director and an elementary executive director. So I work closely with our 11 Title I schools. We have 28 elementary schools. 11 of those are Title I schools. And just from the ground up, seeing the impact of full day K, I read a quote recently that said something like, the battle to ensure the success of children is largely fought, won or lost in the early grades. And I believe that with all my heart, that kindergarten is where it is. And I was so glad to hear the governor say we're in it for the long game. We're here to play the long game, and that's what this is. So why I support full day kindergarten is that, I mean, doubling the amount of time that kids spend in this critical early year is going to pay off in the long run in so many ways. First of all, need for fewer interventions. We know that accurate automatic knowledge of all 26 letters and sounds is a key to reading success. So we save money with lack of need for many interventions, kids needing referrals to special ed, needing to repeat grades. We know we'll have higher graduation rates. We know with that comes lower incarceration rates. So it really is a long game. And I 100% believe this is the right step and appreciate all of those who are with me on this panel to support it.
Representative Waldrip, why don't you go now?
Well, I should be last. You've got a bunch of experts on here and then Steve. So that's always, what you get when you get me onto a panel. But I really appreciate the opportunity to talk about this. I'm not an educator. I have no experience that anybody ought to care about other than I did go to kindergarten and I only went once. So that was a success for me. It took me, there were some touch and go moments there, but I did get out. The issue to me is, as we look at policy proposals and where we spend our dollars, oftentimes as a state, we are very reactionary because that's just human nature. We see a problem, we want to put the fire out. But what we don't always think through is what happened to cause that fire many, many years before. And this is what Amy, I think, was just talking about with the long game and what the governor referred to, because this is a headwaters issue. And it's difficult sometimes to spend money and resources at the headwaters because it doesn't produce immediate results. We can't see the fire going out and feel good about ourselves for having put a fire out with, juniors in high school or seniors in high school or sophomores or, the later grades. But we can prevent those fires early on by giving our kids a really good start in their education. And that is critical to producing long-term results. And so these headwaters issues are what I'd like to focus on in my legislative service, is trying to understand where our resources are best deployed early on so that we're planting these seeds for 15 years down the road. And I think that's something that we have to think about. We have to be very thoughtful and very intentional about how we approach this. And so I think early kindergarten in all of the literature, and as we'll hear today, it's absolutely critical. We do have, frankly, some kids that don't need it. There are some kids who have families that want to do it, that they take that on, but that's a small percentage of our population. And so we have to make it available for that large percentage of our population that will benefit, and the system benefits as a result of that as well. So thanks, Elizabeth, for the opportunity.
Thank you. Senator Escamilla.
Thank you, Elizabeth and United Way, for this opportunity to participate in this conversation. I was thinking a little bit back into the journey of getting where we are, and these are exciting times. It's been quite the process on raising the visibility of evidence-based approaches to better education for our children, better outcomes. I think we all are clear that outcomes is what matters. And in order to have the outcomes we want for our children, kindergarten is one of those pieces of the puzzle that need to happen. And the success rate and the return on investment, it's all very clear. It's all evidence-based and it makes sense. And I recall having this conversation 15, 18 years ago when I worked for Governor Huntsman, and he was a huge, then Governor Huntsman, or Ambassador Huntsman, and he was a big advocate of full day kindergarten as an option, right? To me, this is a tool of empowering parents to make choices and decisions for their children. And in order to do that, they need to have an ability to get their kids somewhere. And when you don't have access to kindergarten, it's very difficult for many of these parents that have done the research, that understand the need for these specific tools. And I've seen it with my own kids, right? It's night and day when you see just what it takes a child through that emotional and cognitive and all the different pieces that come with kindergarten. It literally is a different child. And I love seeing that transformation with my kiddos. And I'm happy I have one that's currently in kindergarten, and everything has changed for her from being in preschool to even kindergarten. There's been that big transition, all in evidence-based. You have amazing educators committed to bringing this new generation of our workforce. So there's this very large component of economic development that needs to be addressed. Our workforce needs to be competitive enough to compete globally. And if our children are not prepared entering grade school, they're already behind. We need to understand that this goes beyond Utah, goes beyond the United States. this is a global market that we live in. And by not having the tools to our children at an early age, we're losing our ability to compete in a global market. So I want to make sure that as much as we see obviously the kids and empowering parents, there's also a direct correlation to where we're going to be as a state competing in a global market 20 years from now, literally, or as a nation as a whole. So I hope people understand there is a lot of pieces to kindergarten. And maybe when you go and you see all the beautiful colors and the committed teachers and the singing and the interactions between the little kids, the kiddos is more than that. It's really putting the foundation for a strong future for our kids. And as a senator of the most diverse district in the state of Utah, which is Senate District 1, it will be 10 next year, thanks to, redistricting. I am not resentful about that, just a little bit hurtful, but because I really want Senate District 1. But Senate District 1 is the northwest quadrant of Salt Lake City and about a big portion of West Valley. All of my schools are Title I schools. So, that component has made a difference, listening to parents saying, especially being able to address certain early childhood issues that, related to trauma or other cognitive disabilities is kindergarten, where you get to actually intervene in many of these kiddos. So there's intervention pieces related to social determinants of health that place, having that opportunity, it also allows them to have a better future and a better opportunity to just succeed and have better outcomes.
Great, thank you. Kris.
I kept myself on mute for the dog won't bark. All that. So my name is Kris Pexton, and I would say I was just a mom, but I'd like to rephrase that and say I'm a mom with 19 years of experience, right? And I love to volunteer in the school and the community. I'm currently the Family Life Commissioner for Utah PTA, and have loved this opportunity. I probably shouldn't be on the panel because I'll start off saying if I was given the choice as a parent, I probably wouldn't have chosen full day kindergarten. And don't kick me off just yet because it keeps going. So as part of my assignment with PTA was to work with United Way and others to discuss this issue. And just through all the meetings that we've had, I've totally changed my mind. When you look at all the data, when you see, first of all, you can see, like you mentioned before, the big disparity of where Utah is versus nationally. Also the different testing rates, how kids perform so much better with full day kindergarten. I was the mom who would want to keep my kids home with me as long as possible, right? Like, oh, I don't want to send them to school. But when I saw the advantages, it totally changed my mind. And when I've kept talking about this issue with all these parents I run into, they keep saying all the different things, like when they've had kids, they've lived out of state before and they've had some of their kids go to full day and they see the other kids who were just in half day. And they said that the difference is astounding that they see within their own family, right? And so you even think of the data, like the parents are the same, all those kind of things are the same, but what was the difference was those other kids had the full day kindergarten experience. And they would say like, oh yeah, the same kind of thing. When one of the kids had it and one didn't, they say, oh, one was so much better prepared for first grade. And like what's been said already, this is so foundational, right? Like you don't meet those benchmarks in kindergarten. A lot of people don't think kindergarten is very important. And I think, oh, we need to change that mindset to say, oh, that's the foundation, right? We want to get to graduation and economic stability and give these kids every opportunity to succeed in life, right? And that all does start in kindergarten. And so my kids are teenagers, right? So I don't have the option to do full day kindergarten for them, but I see how much harder it is for me to help my 16-year-old through the stuff he's struggling with. When I look back and have the perspective I have now, it's like, oh, I should have done a lot more back in those earlier grades to maybe avoid the situation, because it's way much, much harder now dealing with teenagers and all of that. So again, I think this early intervention, this foundation is perfect. And it's really the best time, like with all the learning lags we've had, 3 school years of pandemic, this truly is the time to make this investment. Anyway, thank you for having me.
Yes, thank you. You know, you bring up an interesting point on parents and would they want to and not. And so actually, Amy, I'm going to move to you and ask, like, as a district administrator, are you seeing, first of all, a difference in your students who are attending full day versus a half day? And are you seeing that more parents are interested in full day kindergarten than are able to participate right now?
Okay, how much time do I have? Because yes, and yes. So just a brief history. We have had OEK, or optional extended kindergarten, or optional enhanced kindergarten, in our district for probably a dozen years now. And so what that looks like, and this history is a little bit important. So it means the state provides a certain amount of money for us to have some sessions of all day kindergarten, not for every child who wants it or every child who needs it, but for some kids who qualify. And so every single year that we have had OEK, we have looked at the KEEP scores, the assessment that kindergartners take at the beginning and at the end of the year. And we determine who most needs this extended day. So we have our most at risk academically students who get in this extra bit of kindergarten. And in most cases in the past, we could have 1 or 2 sessions maybe per school, where we could have used 3 or 4 or 5 sessions per school. So you have kind of everybody has half day kindergarten, and the most at risk stay for an additional, the most at risk 12 to 16 kids stay for an additional time. So looking at those most at risk kids, at the end of the year, they consistently outperformed the kids who came in much higher into kindergarten year after year after year. So we all became believers immediately. So this year we had the American Rescue Plan, the ARP money that we received from the federal government. And with the support of our school board, who is wonderful, as well as our district, other administrators, we were able to use that money to fund full day kindergarten in all 11 of our Title I schools. So like I said before, we have 28 schools, 11 are Title I schools, and something to note, to qualify in our district for Title I, you only have to have 40%, which is quite a bit, 40% or more poverty to be considered for Title I funding. We have so many schools that we upped it to 60%. So in Washington County, to be a Title I school, 60% of your students qualify for free or reduced lunch. So those are pretty at-risk populations. In those 11 schools, we have full day kindergarten. We offered it, we got notice 10 days before school started. So we were just hopping to get this put into place, because we felt so strongly we weren't going to turn it down. We said, we'll do it. We'll do the best we can. All 11 principals made the magic happen and implemented full day. We had 96% of our parents opt in to full day kindergarten in those 11 schools. And so we were able to take our OEK money that the state gives us and move it out to the 17 non-Title I schools. So because of that, we now have 52% of our children in a full day program, which is amazing. And in the non-Title I schools, we have waiting lists, parents who are wanting and begging to get into the all day program because they see how important it is. As far as seeing results, I was just before this call, I was looking at our latest Acadians data, which is the measurement that we used to see how our kids are doing, beginning of the year, middle of the year, end of the year. We tested all of our students earlier this year for the middle of the year. As of December 22nd, I was comparing our kindergarten with the state kindergarten scores, and we actually scored 17 percentage points higher than the state, which is pretty remarkable for us. Last year, we had a 64% proficiency, and this year at that time, we had a 78% proficiency. So we're already seeing incredible benefits just from this boost to our full day program. So yes, I do see a difference. Parents see a difference. And what's interesting to me is I was attending a community council meeting at one of our schools, who is a full day kindergarten school. And there were parents, mixed parents on the community council. Some loved it. Some who didn't have kids in kindergarten was really nervous. You know, they were nervous about having that as an option at the school. Well, the parents who are experiencing it this year talked the other parents into it. They just said, we didn't think we would want it either, but we would never go back. And a lot of it comes down to parents who have lived in other states, one from Delaware, one from Nevada, one from Arizona, who are our strongest advocates because they've seen, you know, how impactful it can be. So, yep, we definitely support it here.
Great. Representative Waldrip, I know this next session you're going to be carrying a bill to expand full day kindergarten. Can you give everyone an overview of what's going to be in that bill and what you're hoping to do this next session?
Well, it's yes, and in fact, I just about 5 minutes ago received a draft, Elizabeth, which I forwarded on to you.
Yay.
So we're kind of excited. We actually have some thing to look at, but what we're looking at doing, and this is in consultation with the state school board's recommendation and United Way and the State Office of Education, is looking to phase it in over a 3-year period because it takes time to ramp up from part-time kindergarten or no kindergarten to full-time kindergarten. And then there's also a cost, statewide cost associated with that. So this gives us some time to both ramp up from a staffing and facility standpoint, as well as ease into the budgetary, the additional budget requirements that come with that of about $19 million a year. I don't know that there's a whole lot more to it, Elizabeth. We're going to full-time kindergarten. I think that's the idea, and the the statistics that Amy just cited are pretty well consistent across the board. Every time that there has been an expansion of full-day kindergarten, it's been associated with a significant increase in test scores. And again, this is an opt-out. There's an opt-out provision for families that don't feel like it's right for their child, and they can opt out as they can from any grade. So this isn't mandatory as far as forcing kids to be in school, taking them away from their families, et cetera, et cetera. This is a great option for a lot of families, and will provide fantastic and long-term benefits to both the kids and to our community and state. Did I miss anything in the bill, Elizabeth? Am I forgetting anything?
No, that sounded amazing. And thank you so much. Exciting to hear that you have a first draft. And yes, Amy, just like amazing work you guys are doing in Washington County. And thanks so much. It's great to hear all of those statistics and the take-up rate that you've been seeing. Kris and Senator Escamilla, Senator Escamilla, you mentioned this in your part about parental choice, and it is an important value in Utah. And how will providing more access to full day kindergarten programming empower families and their children?
I think that's key. Really, is this is not a mandatory, policy. It's really about providing evidence-based best practices when it comes to preparing our children to be better and be able to compete in a very competitive market. I see it from that perspective. And if someone doesn't want it, they have the opportunity to just, keep their children at home or do whatever they need to do. So to me, this is what empowering parents and choices is all about. And what's important to note is that as we address the many other pieces of social determinants of health, education is one of them as a key piece of this. So there are going to be families that, in order to provide better opportunities for their children, that kindergarten, piece of the puzzle is critical. And I always think of education as a piece of that brings more equity. And, the equalizer for many children that have no control over where their situation is education. And you want to start early. We know early intervention is what makes a difference. We have a very high rate of autism, for example, in the state of Utah. This type of programs, such as preschool and early childhood education, including preschool and kindergarten, are critical to have interventions that really matter and that are going to make a difference in the long run. And if you're in a situation where you can, you don't need kindergarten for your kids, think about all the other kids that will be in the next couple of years with your children, at those classrooms. So if more kids are prepared to come into those grade schools, especially first to third grade, at a level that could, lift the entire classroom together, it's, I think, also critical. So it's not only about specific children, it's really about all the kids being equipped to come into first grade, second grade, and third grade, which we know are critical when it comes to the outcomes of testing and being able to graduate from high school and pursue whatever that higher education looks like for each individual child.
Kris, did you have anything to add?
I would just that you ask about empowerment. That's the ability to do something about it, right? You feel like you can do something about it. I love what Representative Escamilla said about how, what if you don't have access to that, right? Then the opposite of empowerment is feeling powerless. When you know this is something that could help you and you want it, but it is inaccessible to you. And also the thought of maybe my experience isn't everybody's experience, right? So my friend at work whose child was testing great in preschool, she had high hopes. Oh, he's going to go do great in school. At the end of kindergarten, he was testing into the red. And she was like, I would have jumped at a chance to have him in full day kindergarten, but she's working graveyards. Her husband works swing shift. There is no way she could get her child to the school 2 miles away, which doesn't seem so far, but that seems really far if you can't drive your kid there, right? So it's people like that I think of, they didn't have access and felt powerless to be able to get the thing that would really help their child. And to me, that's with PTA, our whole mission is about having children reach their potential and empowering communities and families to make that happen. That's what we try to do, right? And so, but if you don't have that access there, you don't have the ability to reach it, then how do you feel you can make a difference in your life with it? So to me, that's all about that empowerment, is that accessibility. And to reiterate that this is optional, right? Some kids worry about, or parents might worry, oh, is that going to be too long of a day for my kid or something? And you think, okay, it may not work for all families, but let's make it available for those that it will make a huge difference for.
Great. Amy, I see a question or comment in the chat about some of the opposition and the hearing things like, why should we taxpayers pay for everyone's daycare? How would you respond to that if someone said that to you?
Well, early on in my career, I had a fabulous mentor principal who had to make some tough decisions with regards to funding and staffing and all of the decisions you make as a principal. And one day I said, how do you continually have these hard conversations with these key stakeholders? And he said, I have to look myself in the mirror every day when I go home and say, did I do what was best for kids today? And I feel like every one of us on this panel and most of us in this call, I feel like would say, this is without a doubt what's best for kids. Having spent 5 years as a principal in a Title I school where we sometimes brush hair and brush teeth in the morning and we send home food at night, I don't care if they call it daycare. That child is better off in school all day, surrounded by those who are capable of teaching and nurturing and providing everything that they need, including 2 good meals a day. So yeah, that's fine. I don't think, daycare is the big selling point by any means, but I do believe it is like Senator Escamilla said, it opens up options, and it is an option for families, and it opens up options for kids. And we want to be able to have all of our kindergartners have every option they can to be successful.
Excellent. Yes, Representative Waldrip.
Thank you. I even raised my hand. I'm learning, Mrs. Mitchell. I just like to add on to what Amy just said. We have to, and I say this often, we have to legislate to the real. We talk about the ideal, we can teach the ideal, we can teach the two-parent family with one parent working and the other one at home making cookies and welcoming children and sending them off to school. But the reality is that is not the case for the vast majority of Utahns. In fact, in my district, which is one of the most affluent in the state, we have less than 30% of our families have one parent at home. So we have to legislate to reality. And sometimes that's really hard to do because we don't want to admit that we have kids that need additional support outside the home. It's a tough thing to admit, but we do. We have kids whose parents are working 3 or 4 jobs, or they're single parents and they're stressed and stretched, and they cannot provide the level of engagement and learning that those kids need at a critical time in their life. And you know, this isn't to point fingers or to you know, assign blame. This is simply the reality of where we are as a society and what our kids need. And to ignore that need because we wish it wasn't so is completely irresponsible. And that's what I'll tell my colleagues. It is absolutely irresponsible to ignore the real needs because we wish it just wasn't so.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Senator Escamilla.
Thank you, Elizabeth. And I really appreciate my colleague's just response. I think he's right on. I mean, there's being pragmatic to our situation and the fact that we, you know, and we now have a lot of technology that allows children in classrooms to be even more successful. I mean, you think about all the tools that are available and great educators, which I think is one of the issues that we need to talk about, is the fact that with this commitment to, you know, opening those doors, you know, we need to continue to work in our commitment to our education, our public education system, especially our teachers that are, you know, that are struggling, and the idea of having a full day kindergarten, and also for many parents, this may be their first time interacting in our public education system, and that kindergarten experience prepares them to what comes. So it's, to me, kindergarten is a whole family experience. It's not only about the child, it's really a whole family entering into the public education system of our state, of our local, you know, LEAs, our school districts. And I find that to be truly empowering for parents. And I had children that are adults, teenagers, and then I have little ones. And so I've had this gaps on 10-year gap. It was pretty best, like big gaps in between, and having to enter back into preschool and kindergarten after 10 years was quite the experience. I mean, things change. And I find that to be also a process of education for parents. As a parent, I was empowered to get back my kiddos and utilize the tools available from a preschool program that I had access, you know, and I was very privileged to have access to some of these programs on because of where we live and where we are. But there's families that have no options. So even if you have certain, you know, families that may be at income brackets that want to access, there's nothing. I mean, it's really about empowering parents, about choices. And I think the experience of kindergarten makes sense as a way to get ready for what's coming. And the most critical part, I mean, for me, with our youngest one, for example, every kid is different. I think everyone here that has interacted with their own children or other kiddos, they know that everyone is different. And that's very important. We can't think that, you know, just one model will fit all children. And that's why, again, this kindergarten approach, I've met parents that, you know, they had a very different experience with the older child. The middle kid is different, and they have kids in charter schools, kids in, you know, regular public schools, and how important it is that we have all these choices and we're allowing parents to make decisions on their own. But I think one piece I want to mention is, you know, there was a question about why has it not happened before? It's been, and I call the journey, right? We started saying, I mean, I remember at least 18 years ago with Governor Huntsman. But I will say this, I think we have an opportunity with the surplus that we have this year. It's a pretty unique, and we are treating it as a one-time component because we do need to talk about, there's cost to a lot of these things that we're discussing today. But I think it's time that we put our money where our mouth is. And if we say we are a state that values families and children, this is the ask. I mean, you really value our kiddos, then we're going to make it so they have an opportunity to succeed and continue to make this the best state in the union and continue to make this the best place on earth to live. But if we're not investing on the infrastructure to make them succeed, it's really hard to believe, right? So I'm all of, Elizabeth knows this, I'm running a healthcare bill because for children, I think if we really care about our families and children, let's put our money where our mouth is. Let's make it happen for kiddos. Let's make them so they can be the best they can and have all the potential that I know there. It's in every home, in every little kid out there. Let's give them that opportunity to succeed.
Thank you, Senator Escamilla. And you hit on something that's important. And I'm curious, Representative Waldrip, and then anyone that wants to also respond to this, please do. Like, how have you seen the attitudes towards early childhood education change in the legislature in recent years?
I'm not too long in the tooth in the legislature. It's only I've done 3 sessions. This is my 4th. But I do think that by and large, we're seeing more of a willingness to look upstream, more of a willingness to look at sort of root causes and expend funding there, which is critical, as we talked about earlier. So I'm hopeful that, as we look at all of the funding priorities that we have to balance, I mean, we have, I think we'll have something in the line of $4 billion of funding requests, for, what we have a record surplus. Again, we have $1 billion or $1.2 billion to appropriate, but there's always more need than there is money. My dad used to tell me that your budget will expand to meet your income. And that tends to be true. And in the legislature, our budget always expands beyond our income, and then we have to tamp down expectations and kind of push back on all of the wonderful ideas that are out there. But of all of the wonderful ideas, I think this is one that is a headwaters issue. If you look downstream at all of the issues that this solves, if we look at how much we're spending and all of those things that Amy talked about, all of those downstream expenses, it's a 20-to-1 savings. So for every dollar we spend, we save $20 down the road, and that's a fantastic investment. Any investor would take that in a heartbeat. And yet, in the public realm, sometimes we just don't think in those terms of spending valuable resources upstream. So I think we've seen at least I've seen a shift to be willing to consider those upstream expenditures, and I'm hoping that carries the day this year, and I believe it will. I think that that the evidence is overwhelming. I think that the need is very clear, and so I think we'll be successful in this.
Elizabeth, can I jump in for a second?
Yes, please.
Just in thinking about that, paying attention to the headwaters, I appreciate you so much. I really do. Thank you, Steve, for sponsoring this bill. One of the things that I found interesting is that when I graduated from college with a degree in education, I knew I wanted to teach kindergarten. I actually had to attend an extra 18 months to get an endorsement to be able to teach kindergarten at that time. The licensing has changed since then, but if you study the science of reading and the science of the brain, and you learn about the neural pathways that are being developed in the early years of a child's life, it makes it seem so common sense that you would put money towards these early formative years. I think sometimes we see letters, sounds, sight words, colors, shapes, anyone can teach that, but they don't realize what's happening inside a child's brain and all of those critical skills that are being formed they need to be in a healthy environment. They need to be in an academically stimulating environment to really develop those correct neural pathways. And I think it's so easy to underestimate the importance of a fantastic kindergarten teacher and kindergarten program.
That's great. I appreciate you bringing that up. Oh, and I do have a follow-up question, but I want to get Kris first.
And it's just to follow up with Amy saying like how critical to learn those things and to have the time to learn it in more of a full day setting rather than trying to cram it all into like a half day. That's all.
No, it's true, and such amazing points and information here. Amy, I'm wondering, as you've talked with not only teachers in your district, but teachers and administrators across the state, I think that sometimes there's legislators don't realize that teachers and other districts do want this. And what have you been hearing from other teachers and districts?
Well, we've had a few, calls. Some have come down to visit, gone on tours. So I feel like I really haven't heard of any opposition to it. I think everybody feels like now is the time. 10 years ago would have been even better, but we are so excited. For all of us to be a part of this movement will be just one of the incredible experiences for sure of my career. So I feel like it's supported throughout the state, and thank goodness we have fabulous teachers who were just jumped on board at the last minute to do this and make it happen.
That's incredible. I hear some people in the chat asking how they can get involved. And so I would love to hear from each of you. What's the single most important thing that everyone that supports this, what they can do to help get this passed? Who wants to start?
I can start.
Kris. Oh,
Yeah, so I will say, we're doing a lot of this panels and conversations as we gear towards the session that starts next week, and it's going to be it's different. It was very different last year. It's going to be different this year, I think. One is, obviously contact your legislator, but I always go to these meetings and I ask a commitment from everyone to talk to 5 friends. The more dispersed they are across the state, the better. So you have an opportunity to just say, look, this is very important to me. And this is where you see, the quality of friends that you have, and just our family members, and say, can you please let your, representative and senator know how important this is? And those 5 people, if those 5 people can connect 5 more people, that's one. I think the other part is, that's your initial conversation to your elected official. Let them know who you are, be concise, make it personal. You don't have to write a very lengthy email. Legislators get hundreds of emails a day during the session. Make sure in your subject line, you say you're a constituent. That makes a difference. I will always, in the midst of hundreds, potentially, I've been days that I get thousands of emails. I'm sure the representative as well. We are going to prioritize constituents first as we are trying to get through that. So just let them know, in the subject line, it could be, full day kindergarten constituent. I'm your constituent, and let them know where you live, and just say, look, this is very important to me, and why. 3 bullet points. You don't need to write a thesis on this. One, and second, I think long term, and I agree. I think this is a year for full day kindergarten, and we've been saying this for so long. It's like a weird thing to hear this, like it may happen, and I'm very confident the good representative will carry that, and we're here to support him in the Senate, and just let us know, Steve, how we can help. But I will add, if this becomes a little bit more of a lengthy process, we can't just not make it happen. So just know that you have to build those relationships, and it takes trust. So be respectful. This is kind of like kindergarten 101 on how to behave on the playground. I'm sure Amy can give us some tips on that, but you know, I'm teaching this to my kiddos, right? Like you expect people to be nice to you, you have to be nice. So I just, you know, use those, you know, the manners that you learn at home and kindergarten, if you went to kindergarten, and let's make it happen. I mean, just tell them how important this is for you, and get 5 more friends to do it as well.
Great, Kris.
Yeah, well, kind of like how she just said, like spreading the word. Like in our PTA meetings, we have like a 50-member board. When I presented this to them, you can hear my kid in the background. the support was tangible. Like it was unanimous that everyone supported us going forward with this. And that's a board that represents every district and region in the state. And you could feel the need, like when we talked about the benefits that this would be and all of these things, you could just feel this power that everyone's very supportive of it. So that's part of spreading the word, right? And then for us, I think of as a parent, like how do you advocate for your child or the children in your community? And you would, like, there's an issue, you would talk with the principal, right? Or the teacher and the principal and directly with the school. But then you can also talk with your school board. And then, like, as we said, our representatives. To me, I think that's key now, because it's important to get that funding. And it's important to let them know that it's important to you. So if I would say, like, the key thing is, I love the idea of having 5 friends and have them to spread it. That's fantastic. But I think also maybe they don't know how to contact their legislator. Maybe they don't know who their representatives are, you know, and to help them do that as well, so that they are again empowered to be able to make that action and do that. So that's what I would say, to reach out, and especially right now. I would do it now before the session gets too crazy. So find out who they are and then contact them.
Excellent. Amy?
Well, I agree with everything they said. Just share the exciting news. I have, my grown kids are sick of me talking about this when we have our weekly Zoom calls, but same with neighbors. One more statistic I want to share, and this is to make the point that you can drop it into almost any conversation. I have found a way to share this statistic with so many friends and neighbors. They're probably sick of hearing about kindergarten, but at this time last year, we had fewer than 60% of our kids who knew their letters and sounds in kindergarten. Even in March, it was about 60% this time last year. This year, we made a goal, November 1st, and on November 1st, we had 90% of our kindergartners know their letters and sounds. I don't know why it seems like I can always share that exciting news when I'm talking to my neighbor across the street, or when I'm talking to my sister on the phone, or even my mom. I just think it's exciting to share what good things are happening when we put our money in the right place, and also how that will help benefit down the road. So for me, it's everything, you know, those 5 friends, your family members, your legislators, reach out, keep it at the forefront of any discussion that you could possibly be having about education.
Excellent. And that's so exciting that you guys met that goal. Representative Waldrip.
That's an awesome statistic. I'll just remember that one. I mean, that is a huge, huge increase. I guess echoing what everybody else said, but I'd add one other thing. Legislators listen very carefully to their local superintendents and their local school boards. As much as, you know, a call from a constituent matters, a call or a message from a local school board member or a local superintendent is probably worth, I don't know, 20 individual emails, because we have to rely on their expertise to help us understand what the issues are and where our priorities need to be. And so as much as it's difficult for everybody to figure out who the heck their local school board members are, and I know Kris was saying, you know, it hurts me to know that everyone doesn't know who I am in my district. You know, I've probably got a 0.01% recognition factor. Our local school board members have even more of a challenge. So get in touch with your local school board members and ask them to call their representatives in their school district, which will be more than one, so they can make 3 or 4 phone calls and sort of multiply those efforts if you can commit them to make those phone calls. And the same thing with your superintendents. I think the education professionals know what this does. And so we need their voices to be amplified through this process, because again, I'm just a dumb legislator. I don't know what all of these smart people know, but I know how to listen, and I also know who to trust. And a lot of my colleagues are in the same boat. Senator Escamilla is not in the same boat. She is light years ahead of me, but I appreciate those phone calls very, very much from my local school board and local superintendents. So that would be my suggestion. Thanks, Elizabeth.
Excellent. Well, thank you all so much. I wanted to just provide the opportunity for anyone to say any last parting words. If you have anything that you were dying to say and you hadn't had the opportunity to yet, we do have a few more minutes. So if anyone wants to add anything.
I would just like to say that it's just been a great collaboration for Utah PTA to work with these other community groups to really kind of bring our power together and our reach, so that we can reach out to, you know, the people that are involved with us and our PTA members and schools and things like that. So I think there's a lot of power in this collaboration and bringing all these different sides together.
I'd just say thank you to Elizabeth and United Way for leading the charge on this and really teeing it up. I mean, I'm like the show pony, right? I mean, all the hard work has been done behind the scenes, and they hand the show pony the little thing, and you know, I get to march along with this bill that has been done, and the hard work's been done by so many others. And I just think this is a great reflection on Elizabeth, on you, and on your organization, and the value you bring to the state as one of our key nonprofit partners, leading the charge to make our community a better place. And so I really, really appreciate your diligence and dedication. She has not let me forget about this bill for more than like 2, maybe 3 hours over the last year. So it's good, because I have a short memory. So it's been awesome. And I really appreciate working with Elizabeth and the team that she's put together.
Those were very kind words. I appreciate that. And I do see that Kris put in a link to the Utah Full Day K Today website. It's a website you can go to learn more about the coalition and the work that's happening around this effort. And we would love for anyone on this call to join that effort. There's an opportunity for you to put videos in there. We can help you get connected to your legislators. There will be a number of opportunities that we're sending out. Also, United Way of Salt Lake will be sending out different things as well throughout the session as to where this is at and what you can do. Amy and Senator Escamilla, any last thoughts?
Yeah, it feels so good to be supporting something that we know is so right and so needed and so good for our entire state, and especially for our kids. So I'm so happy to have friends in the legislature. I just am appreciative of both Senator Escamilla and Representative Waldrip. Thank you. PTA, I appreciate you, Kris, and all of your comments. And United Way, thank you so much, Elizabeth. I would be remiss if I didn't thank Voices for Utah Children, because Anna Thomas has been just incredible in this effort, as well as our friends at USBE. They are behind us all the way, and I think it's just this team effort. I feel like I'm just a tag along person who's going to see all of the benefits firsthand. But thank you so much for making this happen and putting it on the forefront. I'm very excited.
Elizabeth, that's really, I just want to add maybe just one point. And sometimes, as you know, individual and constituents, is very overwhelming, and you don't spend every day at the Capitol. I mean, we've been there for so long. Elizabeth and I go back from prior to my years in the legislature, and we used to do advocacy many years ago and together. So for some of us, this is kind of like second nature. For many constituents, they've probably never been at the Capitol. But I just want to add, we're we're in like odd times right now, and these are odd times with the middle of a pandemic, and it may feel like the battles are so difficult, and the uphill battles are so hard. I would say if there is a full commitment of the entire state of Utah for our children, full day kindergarten is a great place to just showcase why we're the state we are and how we focus on family. And so if it looks like it's, something is not moving, or, don't get discouraged. I mean, the legislature ends till the last day. There are certain deadlines that we need to meet based on, in this case, a bill like this will have, I'm sure, a pretty big fiscal note. So there are going to be times that we have to make sure things are happening, but it's till the end. You can still go, you can still speak up. There are opportunities to combine efforts. You're not alone, right? So to the public in general, they may say, oh, it's just my voice, it doesn't matter. Oh, it does matter. And if you bring your friends, if you bring your PTA group, your own school district, if you're talking like Representative Waldrip was saying, your own local elected officials that represent you in your school district, your LEAs, it makes a huge difference. So you're not alone, and it makes a difference when people are coming together and speaking and as a collaboration, as a group. So don't ever underestimate the voice of a mom or a parent that are desperate. And I've changed votes when I hear I've had neighbors come to my house at 11 p.m. because of a bill that's related to education and how important it is to their children. And they had to work 3 jobs, and they're coming from work at 11 p.m. knocking on my door. And I'm not encouraging that for people to go knock on doors of legislators at 11 p.m. But that was such an impactful experience for me. So I just want to let people know that it makes a difference and every voice matters. So thank you.
Senator Escamilla is available from 11 to 12 every night.
Bro, by that time my kids are in bed, Steve. So actually that's when I'm responding to emails. So I apologize if you get one of those at midnight.
Well, I want to thank each and every one of you so much for being on this panel today and sharing your passion and your knowledge. We are so lucky to have you in Utah and have you working on this issue. I really appreciate everyone who's attended the session and joined us today and will advocate with us this session. It will be an uphill battle, but I think we're all ready for it. So let's do this. Go fight, win. Thanks, everyone. Have a great evening, and we'll talk soon.